What is the worst thing about Path of Exile 2? It's a question I've received quite a few times in myriad forms. Try, what don't you like about POE2? And why can you never criticize GGG or Path of Exile 2? How much do they pay you to endlessly shill about a game that is not even out yet, my dude? Well, in my last video, a beginner's Q&A about POE2, I gave a brief response to the question. But in this video, I would like to elaborate on my take a bit more. Path of Exile 2 isn't all sunshine, roses, and rhoas. There's a deeper darkness lurking within that I'm quite fearful of, and it might not be what you think. Out of everything we've already learned about POE2, here are my top 5 worst things. They are of course subject to be changed, resolved, or remedied as we grow nearer to POE2, but they're rather solid presently. Let's get right to it and start with number 5. Well, did any of you fellow exiles doubt this would make the list? Of course, I'm talking about wells in POE2. They take my spot number 5 on this list, but even at number 5, they've already caused quite a ruckus in the POE world. Now, while the mechanic is simple, its meaning is deep, and not in the good way. Wells in POE2 refill your flasks. That's it. They are found in towns and before boss fights, and probably in a few other scattered places throughout the world. The goal of wells is to give your flasks a real weight. GGG would like to instill a real feeling of a resource that can only be truly fully replenished consistently in one method. Through, yes, you guessed it, wells. GGG also enjoy the vibe wells bring to the world, giving the world and towns further meaning beyond being places to grab quests, speak to vendors, get bedazzled by other player characters decked out in truly blinding microtransactions, and listen to some silly Goblin Troop tunes. However, I, like many players out there, see this as an extra unnecessary click. A click that won't be done a dozen times, nor 100, not even 1,000 or 5,000 times by the average addicted PoE player. No, it'll be done tens, if not hundreds of thousands of times per league. And on click number 69, it'll probably not be nice, it won't give feel to the world, it'll feel weighty and unneeded in a game already filled with niche cases, constant action, and terrific assets. Someone on my last video mentioned I might be able to have an impact if I speak more about what I'm not looking forward to in Path of Exile 2. And this is one of the only game mechanics I am not looking forward to. I know I've not stepped foot onto the alpha or beta servers for POE2 yet, but I'm not a fan of wells. We'll have to see if GGG takes our feedback or chucks it into the nearest well. Can you see it? Can you make that out? I think so. I think I see what it is. Maybe, oh, and that's a crash. I sincerely hope that's not our POE2 experience, but given the astonishingly beautiful gameplay we've seen thus far, I fear the graphical intensity or poor optimization might be too much for our PCs, PlayStations, and Xboxes, so it's grabbing the 4th spot on my list of potentially terrible things about POE2. There's no doubt Path of Exile 2 is far more in-depth graphically than POE 1, everything from the varied environments to the numerous monsters and bosses. Then, there are the sounds, which are always turned on for me, but muted by many others, resulting in far better performance. POE2's music and sound design seems to be next level. You'll want to keep it on. Aggregated, all of these will place quite the strain on our systems, right? Well, that's my thought, but there has been a bit of pushback. I've seen some people give 2 arguments. Firstly, POE2 will have the same engine as POE 1, so we should expect similar performance, and second, plenty of POE2 models, textures, visual effects, and the like have wandered into POE 1, so we should already have a gauge on how POE2 shall affect our systems. One decent example is Heist. All the assets there except the player character are extremely high quality and probably from POE2. Still, I'm shaky and uncertain about what's upcoming. One of the largest gripes with current day PoE for plenty of players is staggeringly varying performance. Seemingly minor changes seem to trash one person's system, while a major change might do nothing to another's. In all the games I've played before, I've not seen this issue be so widespread, and with the greater quality of POE2, I'm afraid it'll only be amplified. Now, some of these strains are self-imposed and might not be present upon the launch of Path of Exile 2. Absolutely juiced to the maximum maps are likely to be toned down, mostly in relation to pack size, plus the ridiculous end of character power will be checked at POE2's inception. I'll keep going to the tornado shot example. We might not be shooting 1500 projectiles per second, causing absolute eye cancer on our screens. Instead, we might be shooting 150 projectiles per second and tapping the same power maximum. Even with these 2 points, POE2's graphical intensity is fear-inducing and potentially one of the worst parts about the game. I'm really hoping it allows us a variety of customization and launches with decent optimizations, so not everyone needs a banger system to experience Rayclass full potential. There's no doubt Path of Exile 2 will arrive with an absolute megaton of potential build options and build variety, but once the dust settles, will the depth and desired complexity of Path of Exile 1 still exist? It's still a question to behold, but it's a huge fear of mine and untold others, so it nabs the number 3 spot on this list. Everything in Path of Exile character customization revolves around 3 particular verticals: passive skills, items, and skill gems. Of the 3, we know a great deal about only the final item in POE2, skill gems. Giving GGG the benefit of the doubt, they are the folks who made POE1. They are simply tearing down the mistakes they made and building atop the rubble in POE2, so everything might seriously be improved. But we've not had a chance to yet feast on all the new customization content yet. Skill gems and skills in general are now tied to weapon classes in Path of Exile 2. Maces will have certain themed skills, swords another type, caster staves another, as is the case with axes, wands, crossbows, and everything else. We've also learned support gems in POE2 are meant to de-specialize skills, while the passive skill tree and, I'm theorizing, ascendancy classes are meant to specialize and hyper-specialize characters, respectively. Then, items. We've not seen many big changes from Path of Exile 1 yet, but we've been told they are coming soon and they are big. Chris Wilson was scared of them. Big. I'm confident in the despecialization value in support gems increasing build diversity, but am somewhat afraid for the true wild theory crafters with the limited skill and weapon theme. Will witches be wielding longbows? Will druids take on swords? Can a marauder just whip out a crossbow and be viable? It's PoE, so I'd sure hope so, but until we get our hands on it, it's hard to tell. There's also so much swirling in the air with the unannounced and unrevealed ascendancy classes. Which PoE1 systems are making it to PoE2? For example, will there be cluster jewels or are those gone? Will gear have abyssal sockets? Will abyssal jewels even exist? Will there seriously still be GG unique items? All of this is whirling around in my mind and the minds of many others and remains one of my greatest fears about POE2. I hope that they do not sacrifice too much depth and complexity for the sake of greater simplicity here. Ingenuity and puzzling out awesome, varied characters is the best part of Path of Exile for limitless players. Right before we move to number 2 of the worst things about Path of Exile 2, I would like to ask, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. If you're a huge enjoyer and would like to support my Patreon's growing herd, the link's below. I'm consciously ramping up videos like this, working on improving the quality, and I'm aiming to be the POE2 content creator as we near its June 7th, 2024 closed beta launch. Yeah, I know, I probably won't be the POE2 content creator, but I'd like to be your creator, if you know what I mean. Thank you for the consideration and for watching this video. Now, let's get back to it. Path of Exile 1 is hard enough already, and I'm not even touching on difficulty in terms of game systems. Many new players, especially those new to aRPGs, bounce off POE1 because it's too hard to progress just through the axe. This has happened to numerous friends and family members of mine, despite some coaching. Thusly, after all we've seen so far of Path of Exile 2, the difficulty of the game takes the 2nd spot on my worst things about POE2 list. Now, I'm all for it, but I'm terrified of what it might do to potential new players and even veterans of Path of Exile and the aRPG genre upon the game's launch. We know POE2 is making a ton of noise. Its launch will be larger than any other POE1 release in history, and might even make Blizzard shake a bit in their boots. However, many of the new players hopping aboard the POE2 train may be met with a very different game compared to what they've played in the past. Diablo 1 won't compare. Neither will Diablo 2 or 3. Last Epoch won't compare. Neither will Torchlight Infinite or Titan Quest. Diablo 4 definitely won't compare. Even Path of Exile 1 won't match up. This game's difficulty looks to be on a whole new level, especially when it comes to the barriers to campaign progression. The bosses. Unlike POE1, you will need to be able to down all the bosses in POE2 without dying, 100 to 0. Given some of the mechanics we've seen and the importance of skill in the game, especially early on, I sense POE2 infuriating an unignorable portion of the player base, new and old. Even POE1 veterans might have some trouble here, and only if they persist, learn, and push through will they stay. How many people will do that? Lots of people are calling POE2 an aRPG version of Dark Souls or Elden Ring. I've not played those, but I've seen how rage-inducing the fights in those games are. I hope people will have the patience, willpower, and ingenuity to defeat the mighty foes incoming in POE2. Again, I'm only talking about the campaign here. The endgame can be as wild as GGG would like, and I am here for it. However, it's scary that the campaign seems to be a titanic gateway to progress, and it might cause a mass of players to migrate to easier games upon its launch. We'll just have to see for ourselves. We only have a few months left before we can test the difficulty in the flesh. You've endured me whining for a decent chunk of time, my fellow exiles. You've earned hearing the dreaded worst thing about Path of Exile 2 from my totally sane perspective. Without a doubt, the worst thing about POE2 is likely going to be the community split. Every other worst thing and big fear pales in comparison to this in my mind, as this is a true game killer, or it can be. It has happened to endless games over the years. Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2, almost every edition of Dungeons & Dragons, even just recently, Diablo 3 and Diablo 4, or both of them in Diablo 2. However, all these cases are dissimilar to what's going on with grinding your games, Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2, as GGG is attempting to have their cake and eat it too. They are intending to develop both games at the same time, two huge aRPGs concurrently, and please both communities while doing it. They want to keep running the aRPG they launched over a decade ago in 2013 and launch a new one in 2024 and make it the largest aRPG to ever exist. It's a monumental task, and we're already seeing divides form in the Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2 communities. I hate it, and it's near unavoidable. Legions of POE1 players blame POE2 for what they call lackluster development on normal POE recently. They also claim POE1 shall die once POE2 arrives, and GGG will only focus on their new golden child. People excited for POE2 trash talk POE1 endlessly, calling it bloated, too hyper, too flashy, just vomit-inducing and ready to be retired. And this is when the games aren't even competing in a friendly manner yet. Once POE2 is officially in the hands of players, I'd expect this to magnify, especially if GGG do not deliver on the promise of running both games at once. Jealousy might begin to seep in. Attacks on POE2 and its player base might become more frequent. Then, retaliation shall undoubtedly occur. I can picture them now. You couldn't handle the sheer depth and complexity it took to craft that 9-mirror simplex amulet, you POE2 player. Then, the retort. Oh yeah? Well, at least I don't need to play that same one-button Righteous Fire build for over a decade just to clear anything past Act 10 Kitava. POE pleb. I plead for a world in which both communities can coexist and enjoy both games together. I commonly poo-poo on Diablo 4, but I mean no ill will to its players. Enjoy it, have fun, do what you'd like. Joking around is fine, and I'd much rather see POE1 bad, POE2 good become a thing than actual attacks against each other's communities become truly common occurrences. It's a tricky line to walk, and very little of it is on GGG. It's on us, but it still induces fear in me and tops my list of the worst things about POE2. Okay, now it is your turn. What is the worst thing about Path of Exile 2 in your eyes? Let me and everyone else know in the comments. Whew. I hope that was all relatively constructive. Like I've said before, I enjoy being a beacon of positivity and rarely let my gripes shine through in any facet of my life. This is a bit of a change up, and it's going to be a scarcely seen one. Anyways, that's all for this video. Talamoana, Exile.